Are we rolling?
I believe we are live. Yes.
Hey guys, I think Trevor said we're going to make granola today. Looks like organic granola with pecans, sunflowers, sprouted pumpkin seeds, which we're looking up now to see why that's good.
What's the marketing ploy?
Medjool dates, steel cut oats, which is really good for your biome, coconut, and honey, cinnamon, vanilla, some grapeseed oil. I'm going to guess you could probably use any kind of oil that's good for you.
Yep.
Salt. And then while this is cooking, because it takes a little bit in the oven, then we're going to show you how to make some pickles.
So sprouted seeds are better because they have, since they started to open up, the nutrition is more bioavailable. It's more ready to eat and absorb.
And then also we're going to talk about good roughage and just roughage. So like steel cut oats is a roughage or fiber that will actually feed your gut bacteria. And the seeds will actually break down and feed your gut bacteria. And then like your dates have a lot of fiber. But fibers that don't really do anything except pass through your system would be like your
iceberg lettuce.
Yeah, and your psyllium husks, like things like Metamucil. That's just a binding agent. They don't actually, you will get fiber and it will push the gut stuff through your gut, but it won't actually break down and feed the bacteria of your gut. So
hi Kathy, hi Lillian.
Bran fiber is another fiber that will just pass through the gut. So not all fibers are the same.
Well, they do different things in the body.
Yeah, so when you take fiber supplements, you usually are getting fiber that will bulk up and move through, but they don't actually feed your gut biome.
So what you're looking for, and the fruits, the nuts, like she said, those have it, but like chia seeds here, well, you guys can't see those. They're so small and I'm going to dump them on my computer. But these will open up into a soluble form of fiber, especially if you put them in water. They just open up. And that's a good form of fiber for the microbiome to munch on. As to her point, when you're eating iceberg lettuce and you're taking fibers that bulk, those kind of think of like as pipe cleaners. They're going through and they're scrubbing the intestines. They're helping clean things out.
Well, and a lot of times people that have gut issues with diarrhea will use like psyllium and bulking agents to bulk up the stools to slow motility down also. But they don't actually, there's not a health benefit as far as feeding
the biome. Yeah, and we got to feed the biome. So we're going to start with, I ordered all of this from Thrive. I trust Thrive. Dr. Hyman is one of the investors in Thrive, and he checks everything. So since he's the uber nerd, I let him do the work. I trust him. I'd probably pay a little more in the long run, but this is going to make a couple of batches of oats. And so you start with a 2-pound bag of steel cut oats. Oh, and I posted the link. So the link for the recipe, I actually beat you to it. Thank you, Susan.
Now, steel cut oats, I love oats. I just love oats. But steel cut oats are not what you think oats are. So these remind me of grape nuts. So they're harder. They're not, they're like tiny little bits, and they're really hard.
And you can use the regular organic oats. You can use those. I actually got these because
I'm not even sure how that'll work for granola, but
That's
if
where
you
I
if
think
you
I
make
made the mistake.
if you make if you like oatmeal, I love oatmeal, by the way, or you like to make like refrigerator oats, these ones are not. You should not use these ones for that. They are tasty, but they're hard. They're they're going to be like grape nuts.
This will be interesting because this is supposed to make a gallon, and since I use steel cut oats, we're not going to actually have the volume.
Do we have any more?
I don't think so.
I usually
Not
have
the
a-
first time I've made a mistake. Not going to be the last.
I would.
I
But
don't.
anyway, if you use these to cook, like if you're wanting oatmeal, this is especially if you bake your oatmeal or make oatmeal in a crock pot. This would be great.
So, 2 cups of oats go in. When you look at the recipe is going to be done out in cups, and recipes are kind of like guidelines.
I
And
never follow them.
since I've already messed this one up to using the pellets rather than big oats,
They might work out that they make like clusters.
yeah, they're going to make clusters because I'm going to use honey.
But if you really want to add some good fiber to your system, there's a really good crock pot recipe for these, but you have to cook them a long time and you have to use a lot of fluid.
So I'm using coconut, shredded coconut. Just take the shredded coconut. I'm going to add about a cup. This is a 2/3 cup with a 1/3 cup. So there's a cup. The recipe actually says 2 cups. I'm going to add sunflower seeds. And you got to remember, you're getting more than fiber with these because you're also getting healthy fats. You're getting fabulous vitamins because nuts and seeds are in the top 5 of things that are nutritionally dense. So we're going to add a cup of sunflower seeds. And you can ask Jess, I am always screwing up the recipes or whatever. They're hardly ever not edible.
Well, I never follow a recipe. I'm horrible at it. My granny always just said a bit of that and a pinch of that, and that was good for her, and that's good for me.
So here's the pecan halves that I got. About a cup of pecan halves. And now pumpkin seeds or pepitas, and we're going to put about a cup in there. And these bags are not emptying. The only thing that I have emptied are the oats. I've used a portion of the bags otherwise. So the cost on this, like
try one of them.
if you get a good,
I want to see these.
if you get a good oatmeal, a good organic oatmeal is like $5, $6, $7 a bag.
And I'm not real sure what they're calling a sprouted.
Doesn't look much different.
It doesn't. There's like a little.
Looks bigger.
There's like a little white tip on there. Can you see that? That's about it. Tastes basically the same.
And so we have our bowl of stuff. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to do a bunch of cinnamon. Learn something interesting. If you've been a nurse, you have probably been exposed to Pseudomonas.
That's bad news stuff. If you ever are around somebody and they smell like grape Kool-Aid and they haven't been drinking grape Kool-Aid, and by the way, you should never drink Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid is horrible for you. And if you're sick and you're drinking Kool-Aid, then there you go. But Pseudomonas smells exactly like grape Kool-Aid, and it's usually associated with your bladder. A lot of people with catheters have Pseudomonas, and you literally cannot get rid of it. It's a slime. It encapsulates itself with a slime
biofilm
layer, and it literally looks like slime, and smells like grape Kool-Aid.
So that slime layer is a biofilm. That biofilm is actually busted by cinnamon. I was in a conference call today with a doctor. We're using a new lab. So the labs we used before that I used religiously were the Biome FX. I used quite a bit a Genova organic acids test, and I used a Genova map test, GI test. And of those tests, those 3 tests, there's a new company that's come out. And this, I'm just going to take a moment and rant. Dr. Terry Walls, in her book, The Walls Protocol, talks about how standard of practice. I feel so bad for my medical brethren because they are incredibly intelligent. If you ever look at the stuff that they have to study and know, it's incredible. And these people can think critically, and they are incredibly smart. Insurance companies and standard of care has handcuffed them. And Dr. Walls, who had MS, went through and had she had MS. She was in a tilt recline wheelchair, and she started to treat herself. And she went to the literature. And then when she went to
food, she treated herself with food.
And she had supplementation in there, but yes, food was the foundation. And that's our foundation here is food. I would rather you eat it than take it in a pill. But with that being said, she found out that standard of care, the practice of medicine, and this is a medical doctor saying this.
She's a surgeon.
Is 17 years behind the research. And so that I found quite ironic because I've been using a microbiome test now for 3 years, about 3 years now. And there's a new one that came out called the GI map. And the GI map, and there's a couple of them by that name. This one's by Designs. And the GI map combines those 3 tests, which are about $2,400.
In here.
A couple teaspoons, sorry. By design, or they have taken those 3 tests: the microbiome test, the organic acids test, and the other GI map test. They have taken those 3 tests and combined them into basically 2 tests: GI map and honey, 1/3 of a cup, please. Here we go. Basically, we just want to mix it in. It combines it into 2 tests, an omics test, which looks at how your metabolome works, and an organic acids test. So we can now look at that in 2 tests, that what used to take 3 from 3 different ones. And that's brand spanking new. That's only been in the last couple of years. This health and wellness field is evolving so incredibly fast. It's not even funny. It's unbelievable. Now, she's going to add 1/3 of a cup of grapeseed oil.
1/3 of a cup?
1/3 of a cup. Now, grapeseed oil, source it sustainably. Make sure it's cold pressed. It is a high heat oil, but we're only going to actually put it in 325 degrees. So it should not cause any issues.
Grapeseed is a really good carrier oil for your essential oils if you like to do essential oils.
She likes this. I didn't know that. We do have a question. What would be a good substitute for coconut? The recipe is a guideline. That's all it is. If there's something that I've talked about that you don't like, put in something you do like. At the end of this, I'm going to put in dates. Whereas in the original recipe that I looked at, they didn't even do dates.
I'm going to use more of this stuff.
Go right ahead.
Because it's not sticky enough.
You know, that might be pretty close to a gallon. And it's funny, Dr. Dr. Lipsky, who I actually got the original thing from, the original recipe from, she actually mixed this all with her hands. And she's like, honey, and you can see our honey is locally grown.
Honey is actually really good. They actually in France they have bees with honey that they use. Well, we use meta honey for wounds. So
Manuka.
Meta honey is
Meta.
it's a honey. It's honey. Honey is just good for wounds.
It's honey.
So put honey, but you have to get the sterile honey. It doesn't have bacteria in it, but wounds that need to be a draw.
Taste that.
You impregnate gauze with honey, and then you put it on your wound and you let it do its thing because it'll get sloppy. It pulls out all the junk. It's a amazing antibacterial and for wounds, but it's for your throat and all kinds of good stuff.
And so back to my original point, Pseudomonas, which I saw on this person's GIFX, Pseudomonas, the biofilm is actually broken by cinnamon.
Every nurse needs to start their day with tea with cinnamon in it.
No kidding. So now,
that's actually pretty good.
And here, cooking's an experiment. Cooking is like eating. It should be fun. If you have to be so regimented about things that you're not having fun with it, just lighten up. So now we're going to split this into 2 pans.
Kind of looks like bird seed.
The oil, the grapeseed oil, what that's for is if we had the big flecks of oats, the big flecks of oats would brown better. So this will brown, but it's not going to be as visible as the other one. And then what we're going to do is put it in the oven. The oven's already been preheated to 325, and it's going to go in there for 15 minutes. Every 5 minutes, we're going to stir it a little bit so that it browns and cooks evenly. And then when it's done, I'm going to add some medjool dates to it.
You don't like
lots
dates?
Of honey, lots of fruit.
I bet raisins would be really good in this.
But I've worked on my microbiome and my health so that this stuff doesn't put the hammer to my blood sugar or, more importantly, my insulin. But remember this from last week? The starter for the kefir, this stuff is actually pretty daggone good. I've already done it a couple of times. She's afraid to touch it. But when we're done, I'm going to put it in a bowl and give it a whirl.
But honey does not spike if you get real honey, organic honey, beehive honey, it does not spike your blood sugar. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a low glycemic sweetener. So if your body works right, you should not have any issues.
And that's the whole idea.
This is good.
The whole idea is not,
and I'm just hungry.
The idea is not to, Alexa, set a 5-minute timer.
5 minutes, starting now.
I love that thing.
Alexa's a part of the family. She starts her morning out every morning.
The thing that I was going to say about the idea is not to be so restrictive that you never enjoy life again. And I had a Big Mac a couple weeks ago. Actually, I had 2 because I wanted them. And then I clean it up. And that's the whole idea. You're not supposed to go without.
Chop these.
Not supposed to go without.
These are huge.
Enjoying
We're gonna
yourself.
chop them up.
Are there pits in there?
Actually, I have a funny story about dates. I love dates. Dates are so wonderful, and I remember them from a kid. They used to come in all the fruit baskets, but my son needed more fiber. These things are amazing for fiber in your diet. Everybody should eat dates. A day to day is amazing for you. But
I'm giving you the fish cleaning board, but no fish have ever been cleaned on this board.
I used to give them to my son, cut them up in little bits, and I told him it was chocolate. He believed me. He ate a date every day, and he never had an issue. Pregnant people, I'm told from my pregnant friend. Well, I told her that she was doing better because dates are actually fiber. Fiber holds water, all that good stuff. Anyway, she's pregnant, and she swears that they help her sleep. I don't know about that, but
So for the dill pickles,
yes, these do have a pit.
we've got grape leaves, dill weed, supposed to have dill seed as well. Don't have it. 2 tablespoons of salt.
Don't bite into a date unless you know it's been pitted, and then do it carefully because inevitably you're going to find a pit. And that, if you can see that,
Yeah, they can.
that is a big, that'll break your tooth.
Don't bite your date. They might not like it.
Yeah.
Oh, duh. Thank you. I've had her running all over town to get salt, and here's salt in there. That's funny. So should I use the rosemary salt and salt that we did, or should I use the pickling salt?
Just use that, I guess. You could do whatever you want to do. You could season your pickles however you want. You could put some cayenne peppers in there.
I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with the rosemary.
Actually, the funny story about the salt is he's like, hey, did you leave the store already? Yes. Oh,
I always do that
need
to her
salt.
too.
I'm like, well, I'm already left. Well, that's okay. Well, there's nothing here. We live in a little town, so there's nothing. So I thought, I'll stop and get a coffee and ask him for a bunch of salt. So I go through McDonald's. Of course, their coffee machine is down. So I'm like, that's fine. Just, can I have some salt? Well, they wouldn't let me buy anything that they wouldn't give me any salt unless I bought something that required salt. So I'm like, okay, give me some fries and give me a handful of salt. Well, they gave me specifically 5 packets of salt, and I ate 2 of the fries and threw the rest away.
So I have
That's my best
taken
effort.
2 cups of water, and yes, it looks a little dingy because I've used rosemary sea salt in here. Rosemary, once again, be interesting to see how this works because rosemary is an antimicrobial.
Well, actually, yes, and rosemary is one of the #1 herbs to detox your liver.
Grape leaves. We had a great time Sunday. We went over to Jungle Gyms, walked all over the store again, trying to find grape leaves. Finally found them in the Mediterranean section. So you want 2 grape leaves. Now, why do you want grape leaves? I did not know this. Have any of you ever made quart jar pickles before? I have. And this is something that I learned.
When he tells you, I'll give you another nugget.
The tannins from the grape leaves actually preserve the crunch in the pickle. So these were canned over a week ago, and they've been sitting in there, and I wonder if you can hear that. I can't get it to break. There it was.
Alexa off. Tannins.
Crunchy.
So tannins, if you don't know, I'm going to give you a nugget. Tannin is also found in tea. And tannins are
black tea bag will
wonderful. It helps with people that get UTIs a lot. Tannins help protect you from that. So tannins are good for you.
Grape leaves are actually another good form of soluble fiber. Aha, here's my towel.
They're actually really delicious.
Can you scoot in a little bit? I'm going to hit you with the door, baby. There you go. Thank you.
Anyway, you usually find, so if you go, they're either in Greece. We found them in the Mediterranean. section, but you'll usually find them, or when you order them, or you find them in the store. They're usually packed in oil, and they usually are filled with rice and a bunch of spice.
Oh yeah.
And one time we found grape leaves that had cheese of some sort in them. They were delicious.
It was feta, wasn't it?
I think it was feta.
And we picked up some blueberry infused goat cheese.
Oh yeah, it's purple, and we haven't eaten it yet. So we found a charcuterie. Well, I have a charcuterie board thing on my phone. I don't know why. I never make them, but there was a day that they were all made out of purples, and it was this beautiful purple cheese. But it was actually goat cheese, and it's rolled in wild blueberries.
No. Lexa says we have a new notification. So now we have the stuffing of the pickles. We bought these pickles at the Columbus Farmers Market.
These are really gooey. Never worked with dates.
Oh, I forgot to. Oops.
And dates are just delicious. I don't know if you've ever had them. I guess the closest thing that I would think they would look maybe are plum, but the dates are just, I don't know, they're just delicious. They're kind of like a brown molasses
Thing.
Like if you've ever had like Fig Newtons, the insides is kind of like a date minus the seeds.
So what I forgot to tell you was in the prep of the pickles, some cloves of garlic. I've got smaller cloves, so I'm going to use 3. If you got big cloves, use 2. And that also depends on how much you like garlicky pickles.
Well, garlic will add heat. It'll add some spice to it.
And once again, if before you prep these, so as I am prepping these and letting them go in there, when you crack those and you do that, that activates the garlic's antioxidant system. And so you actually start to increase the amount of acin. You're too big. Acin in them, thereby increasing their antioxidant effect or content, I should say. So that's a little big. They'll go in last if needed. Coolest canning jars. They have a flap in there so that if things start to burp and go crazy, then that's just too big. Those 2 are too big.
Cut it off. Can you cut a piece or will it work?
I
don't
think,
know.
yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to try it. Not this time. So then I add the water with the brine. That's the big thing with the brine. You've got to make sure the brine covers the pickles. Once you do that, put the burp lid on. The pickles are ready. And I'll just set it over there. It stays cool and dark and just does its thing. So now we're still waiting. You want to try one of these pickles?
Yeah. Everything's on a slow boat from somewhere.
If you're coming in again, Susan, just yell at me because I have a bunch of starters at the house. I'll just bring one in.
Or you can have a spoonful of that. Isn't that what
I actually have a starter at the house. Hear how crunchy that is?
Good stuff.
And once you want to slow the fermentation down, just cap it, put it in the refrigerator. But that took what, 5 minutes to prep and do?
Yeah, you could probably put some chilies in there.
Oh,
Make some spicy pickles.
yeah, I bet you some of those would be good. But the farmer's market just had them.
Those were Amish grown.
Uh-huh.
Amish man had to chase us down, give us our pickles or our cucumbers, baby cucumbers to make our pickles.
Yeah, I walked away.
So some dates, I will say, if you want to buy dates, not all dates are the same. Some dates are hard, and they're not very flavorful. Don't choose those ones. Buy a really good date, because then they're really soft and chewy and yummy.
Did I put dill in there?
No. He didn't make any dill pickles. He's just making pickles.
Just making salt pickles. It's supposed to be a teaspoon of dill and a teaspoon of dill seed. We do not have dill seed, so I'm going to put just a big layer of dill on top. And then I'm going to stir it up. As you can tell, we are not professional chefs. We are healthcare workers just trying to do the best for ourselves that we can.
So if you grow your own little pickles and you don't have enough, you could cut up cauliflower, put in there.
Yeah.
You could put onion. You could put peppers.
Those are all great ideas.
Carrots. You can put carrots in that.
Now I got about a tablespoon of dill in there to let that infuse into the water. There we go. We'll see if I screwed it up in about 3 or 4 days.
Does our thing need to be?
I stirred it once. It didn't look like it was doing too great. I may actually turn up the heat. That's the old stove, and that just doesn't work like our gas stove. It works. Glad I have it. Glad we have it here. But it's not quite the other one. And so I have several of the new GI maps out, and we have several people on here. If anybody's interested in seeing what one of the reports looks like, I can actually go over that report and start to answer questions on that stuff, because it's truly fascinating with how much we are learning all the time on this stuff. But there is still no one best test. So, how long can you store kefir in the refrigerator? A couple weeks, I think. Well, let's find out.
Well, I bet it's going to be longer than that, because you're supposed to be able to
How
take
long
this
can you stir kefir
and
or keep kefir in the refrigerator?
more different batches, like a friendship bread.
Yeah, because you can do up to 7 batches off of one. It's basically fermented milk. And since technically it's already spoiled, nothing bad should happen. But if you leave it out, it becomes super sour and harsh in taste very quickly. Place it in the far corner of the fridge because that's where it stays more or less the same. And basically, if it becomes clumpy and foul smelling, should last a month or so if stored properly, pretty easily. So there you go. About a month, plus or minus. And you can tell it that needs stirred again. Basically, when it becomes too strong to drink, that's when it's expired because you can no longer stand the taste. I think I should turn that up a little bit.
I think it's just the steel cut oats, honestly.
Alexa, stop.
Or we could put it. We could put it closer to the bottom.
Put them on the bottom.
Maybe.
Oh, they smell good.
They smell good.
I'm going to move them down. Since we've never done the dates before, how can we mix those up and have them stay separated easier?
Well, you won't like the idea or know how they do that, but usually they put sugar. They roll them in sugar.
So we roll them in oil?
No, I mean once you separate it with this, it'll be fine. But that's how they keep stuff separated with sugar.
I'm gonna say, or we could actually roll them in coconut too.
Well, I mean, I think once you put that in there, they'll separate.
Okay. Actually, what I think we'll do is probably take those pans, put them back in there with the dates, and then mix it all up again. Then just cover that. So, any questions as we wait? Want a bite of a raw pickle?
Mm-mm. I actually have some hummus and corn chips over there because that's my weakness. But if you guys ever want any really good, tasty corn chips, and they're so hard to find, but they're called Late July. They're non-GMO, organic, awesomeness.
Some interesting thoughts to ponder. We have had the Alexa set a 5-minute timer.
Starting now.
We have had the calorie hypothesis shoved down our throat for the last, how long? 50 years. I mean, and I was listening to a PCOS book, and this lady was talking about the failed calorie hypothesis, because part of PCOS is if you're carrying extra weight is its own progenitor of fat. The fat cell secretes a pro-inflammatory cytokine around itself. And so this fat cell becomes inflamed, and then this fat cell becomes inflamed, and then this one becomes inflamed, and they just keep doing that. And so to tell somebody to go out and exercise more and eat less, typically what happens is the person will go out and exercise more, but then when they come home, they move less. The body wants to stay in this homeostatic balance. And so what has been forced upon us by marketing saying that the calorie in a Snickers is the same as a calorie in a cucumber is vastly false. The biochemistry for what happens with a cucumber is vastly different than the biochemistry that happens with a Snickers.
Well, the calorie is the same, but the nutritional value of that calorie is not.
Yes, but our bodies do not burn calories in a vacuum. That's the way they originally
Oh yeah, they burn.
defined a calorie.
How they burn them in a little oven.
They burn them in a vacuum in an oven. How much does this produce? And that's not us. That's not the way the human body works. So when you are eating a Snickers, the sugar will increase your insulin, which increases pro-inflammatory cytokines. It increases cortisol. It does all kinds of things that make your body think that it's in danger, or it's. You ever notice people who eat lots of sugar start to just bounce off the walls, go
That's your
crazy?
ADHDs.
Yeah. And that's because their body is in a literal state of fight or flight. Whereas, and have you ever not been able to eat another Snickers? In my case, no. I can always find room for another bite of a Snickers.
Oh no, I wouldn't even put the first bite in my mouth. That's
But
just gross.
I'm pretty sure that I couldn't OD on a bunch of cucumbers. Have you ever heard of anybody overdosing on arugula?
No, but I could keep eating it until I was full.
But you can't sit there and wait 5 minutes and then you're hungry again either. Because
it'll take a while.
Because sugar in the human body, when you found sugar way back in the day, the body shut off the leptin response so you could eat as much of this stuff, get a huge insulin response, and then you would pack on weight, because insulin is the body's fat packing hormone. Whereas if you're eating vegetables, you don't get the same big insulin response, and leptin kicks in.
Yeah, we had a patient that turned orange because he ate too many carrots.
Yep. But you could keep on eating. They could keep on eating them.
She said that maybe you could go over the biome chart.
The biome chart. So, you know what? I wonder if I have. Excuse me for just a moment, and I will see if I cannot share my screen. Give me a second. Lab. Such a new lab. I keep forgetting what the name is. I know. Die.
Alexa off.
All right, so now I'm going into the resource library, and all right, let's see if this comes up. So this is the new diagnostic extra camera, share screen. Let's see. Share screen. Huh. When I switched to that other window, could you guys see that by chance? Okay, let's share screen. Let's go to the window. I really don't understand why this doesn't work. Aha, there we are. So this is the newest quantitative, qualitative test for the microbiome, and they're a lot more specific. So now we see pathogens. You should not see any of these pathogens on the test. See this, the result? The normal should be less than 1 to 10,000, but regardless, we want to see less than detectable limits on these. And when we are seeing these things not being less than detectable limits, then we have to start to look at your case to see if this is something that we need to treat or not. It shows us not only bacterial pathogens, but now we're looking at the parasitic pathogens. And once again, these should all be less than detectable limits. And this Giardia, he is one bad little dude, because evidently he starts all kinds of autoimmune issues, and he starts all kinds of GI issues. He's just one of those guys that is not a good boy. The other thing that this test is very sensitive for is Helicobacter pylori. A lot of the other tests don't detect Helicobacter pylori, and H. pylori is not a commensal bacteria in us. So when we start to see him detected, he is not a good player, and Helicobacter pylori will cause your GI symptoms to worsen because he actually causes hypochlorhydria. And hypochlorhydria is, as simple as that sounds, and as simple as that is to treat, that causes a lot of bad things in the body. You can't absorb your minerals, you can't kill off bacteria, because that's the first thing that happens. So like if your teeth are not pristine and you swallow bacteria, well, they're supposed to die when they hit the acid pit in your stomach. And if your stomach does not have an acid pit, guess what? They get to live. And then here we start to see the normal flora. But once again, this is something that's it's a balance. So your normal flora here, you should not have ones that are overgrown. Akkermansia, this is getting a new, it's getting a new window. The normal is going to go up to 6 or 7. I forget what they said. I think they said 6. So this person actually would not be considered high, but in the old one, it was considered high. Akkermansia, if he does overgrow, he is mucinophilia, which means mucin loving. He goes in and he starts to clear out the secretory IgA slime layer in your stomach so that new secretory IgA can come into play. And for those of you that are really big nerds on the whole COVID front, this little guy right here has been shown to be a very significant player in COVID long haulers. Faecalbacterium prognitzi. I don't know who named him, but I don't like that person. So we get to start to see who's going to be susceptible to long haulers, and then we now have ways to start to address it using probiotics, using food as medicine. And then you start to see the Firmicutes to Bacteroides, and we want to see more Bacteroides than Firmicutes by a lot, like 2/3, over half of your microbiome should be the Bacteroides. And so you can just see this goes on. We go into dysbiotic and overgrowth. And then here we start to look at more autoimmune triggers. And we can see who's in here. And here's that Klebsiella pneumoniae that Jessica was talking about, that I was talking about with cinnamon. You really do not want to see these guys in any detectable limit. And then we go down, Candida. I am amazed at how much Candida I actually see. It is unbelievable. And then we start to look at, I don't know if they're going to add more viruses to this, but we look at cytomegalovirus and Epstein-Barr. Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, what's that associated with?
Epstein-Barr.
Cytomegalo, not Epstein-Barr. They both do a lot of mimicking of other diseases. So if you see those have to be addressed.
I don't remember. Is that mononucleosis? I don't know.
When we look at the protozoa, the parasites, and we see blastocystis hominis, these are infections that we can now see that in the medical realm really just don't set off any alarms for them. But we know that exposure to blastocystis, and I'm speaking correctly there, right?
I'm listening. What's repeated again?
So like blastocystis hominis, cyclospora, you guys really don't look for those in the medical field.
No, not unless we are required. I mean, not unless you're specifically looking for them. They're not something that we would routinely look for.
So these are
CMV is related to viruses that cause chickenpox, herpes, simplex, and mononucleosis, which is kissing disease.
Oh, she got that one. Not she got infected. She called that when you said that's mono. Yeah. And so
no, I do not have any of those anywhere associated with them.
So the protozoa and the worms, these are just common ones, and we know they need to be treated in people because these, what we call occult hidden infections, are things that can drive autoimmunity. And then digestive health. I don't know why every test in the world doesn't include these, but when we start to look at steatocrit, that's how much fat is in your stool. You should have less than 15% fat in the stool. If you have more than 15% fat, your enzymes aren't working, number one. And number two, you can't actually absorb your vitamin D. So you have to get on pancreatic enzymes, and you have to get on betaine, and you have to figure out which of these occult issues are causing the problem to eliminate it. And then GI markers, beta-glucuronidase. If you have issues with estrogen, this is something that will fire up real quick, and there are ways to use calcium diglucarate and things of that nature to get it to loosen and to minimize. And secretory IgA, antiglidin. If we see antiglidin, we know that they're having some issues with gluten sensitivities. Calprotectin, this says less than 173. Yeah, you want to keep it way less than 173. This is a irritable bowel issue, and once it starts, if you see it at 200, you are like an automatic referral to a GI guy. And then zonulin is also associated with zonulin's associated with gluten and how good these barriers are. And if we start to see that, then we know that we have a problem with leaky gut, and that has to be healed up. Oh yeah, the brush borders, the Pseudomonas. This was something new that I learned. The Pseudomonas ones here, if they are high, brush border, your brush border is having some issues. So that brush border, did I just do all that talking for nothing? I really hope not. These are new tests at the clinic, Susan. So we're going to pull out I'm going to clear this out. We're going to pull out the granola. So you can see this is just, Jess and I are not accomplished chefs or anything like that.
I don't know. We're pretty good.
We
are pretty picky about our food.
well, I didn't say we weren't food snobs. I said that we were.
But we make some pretty awesome food that we'd rather stay home for.
Yeah, a lot of food going out is just starting to be plain. Let me hide that. Look at this. I did turn it up to 400. That just didn't seem to be doing it for me.
My guess is as it cools, it's going to get... I would say don't use the still cut oats. I think that's the issue, but I think it's going to be pretty good once it cools because I think it's going to stick together.
Well, and if you want it to stick in clumps, just take a little more honey, dump it in there, stir it up with your spatula, and it'll clump.
And if this doesn't, I bet it would be one awesome crumble on top of a rhubarb.
Oh, yeah. Fresh rhubarb pie.
Or peach. And I'm starving, so I'm having my little late July chips.
Yeah, man, that's hot.
My rainbow carrots just didn't last long enough.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, honestly, if you think about eating, that's why we have to have proteins. We have to have fats. Of course, you were eating some almond butter with it.
No, I love rainbow carrots. We planted some in the garden, and hopefully they are going to grow and make me some beautiful carrots. But I was dipping them in cashew butter. Because that is one of my favorite snacks.
Oh, you were right. You break those dates up. Definitely use the other types of oats. I wasn't even thinking about steel cut oats being the little itty bitty hard buggers.
I don't know. I really loved grape nut cereal when I was little. My dad used to love it, and therefore I did.
I loved it, but I put like a bucket of sugar on it.
I never put any sugar in it.
I did.
And I don't like milk, so I always put water on my cereal, and I still put water on my cereal even as an adult, but now I put coconut milk on my cereal. But yeah, I was always the weird girl that put water on her cereal. But milk is just...
I didn't even know that was a thing. That sounds so horrible.
Milk is... milk and me are not friends.
That's true. You have a lactose intolerance issue. Actually, her kids have it. She has it. Granny has it.
Her mama has it. My aunts have it. Actually,
Casey has it, and he still eats.
It is in our DNA.
Casey's hilarious because he'll drink milk, and then it's a race.
It is.
It's like somebody hit the go button. You want to try a little bit of that?
He don't care. But I can't tolerate it. Milk is just... And the ice cream, I just can't tolerate it.
Do you want a little bit of that?
I'll have it in a spoon. I'm just going to eat a spoonful.
I see how you are.
Actually, I'm not going to lie. It looks like the things I feed the woodpeckers. The little soot, or the woodpecker bell. It's exactly what it looks like. The woodpecker bell.
Mm-hmm. So there's my kefir that we made last week.
It's very hot.
Yeah, that's why I'm using the kefir, because it's been refrigerated.
If that was pressed down and cut up into squares, that would be like a really awesome fruit and nut granola bar.
Oh, polyphenols. So if you were to take this and put in, I was listening to Dr. Dan Kalish talk about Akkermansia and commensal bacteria and Ficobacterium prevnitzi. And the thing that I should add to this are pomegranate seeds, and cranberries, because those will increase the biophenol or the polyphenol and bioflavonoids. So let's see.
I bet you do prefer your milk on your cereal, but I do not like milk.
Take a small, just
No.
a small.
Mm-mm.
Who
No.
thinks she should try just a small?
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I don't like kefir. I've had it. They sell it in little bitty bottles. It's not my thing.
It's coconut kefir.
No.
It's pretty good, actually.
I'm not big on fermented foods. There's only a few that I like. I really like sauerkraut, and I like pickles. And that's really about the gist of it.
Those pickles turned out pretty good. Well, and that's it. So in about an hour, almost exactly, we made about a gallon of granola, and I put it in my fermented kefir, and it's pretty good. I've never been one for steel cut oats. I'm just not big on oats.
I'm gonna maybe use that as a topping because I am gonna go and make me some refrigerator oats, and I bet that would be like a little spoonful would be great inside of them.
I'm going for that date.
The date is pretty good.
And as long as your blood sugars, as long as your insulin responds well, then hey, you can eat stuff like this and you'll be okay. Oh, yeah. Lillian, I don't think I've had milk in, wow.
I mean, the only milk in our fridge is always for Buddy.
Well, I'm just thinking,
We have almond and coconut milk, but that's about it.
I don't think since before the big house, 2012, I don't think I've had milk since 2012. Maybe even before then.
I honestly can only remember when my father made my bowl of cereal and put salt in it instead of sugar. And then wanted me to eat it. Was so mad at me because I wouldn't eat it. It was like, and the salt clabbered the milk. And that was when my sister was born, and my sister is 40. That's probably the last time I had milk on cereal.
Scarred for life.
Yeah. I just don't like milk.
So if you want to learn more and want to learn more about making food your medicine, the conspiracy theorist in me says, hey, everybody should make sure they know how to eat right and eat properly, because what happens if the zombie apocalypse happens, or, this all just implodes on itself? You're going to have to know how to grow your own food and make your own food.
Lillian, actually, water and milk are basically the same. Your cereal doesn't really taste any different until you stop eating it. It's just wet. The milk is just wet. She said she's never tried it with water.
I wouldn't try it with water.
It doesn't bother me at all.
Okay, let's also get something straight. What cereal are you eating? Because cereal, if you're eating the General Mills cereal and stuff like that, unfortunately, that stuff is mass produced in fields that are sprayed, and you cannot get the glyphosate off of it.
Yeah, that's probably true. So I always had, when I was little, because of course I don't buy cereal and haven't eaten cereal since I had my son, and he is 22 years old soon. So 23 years ago is probably the last box of cereal that I ate, like cereal syrup, other than Rice Krispies. But I always like bran flakes, just bran flakes, or just shredded wheat, but not sugared. It was good.
I haven't had cereal in forever.
Honey Bunches of Oat was what I lived on when I was pregnant with my son. And if I even smell it now, I just want to hurl. But it kept me alive for a bit.
And getting back to the fermented foods and the kefir and stuff, your fermented foods should be eaten at least 2 to 3 times a week. So if you're eating sauerkraut,
Well, and if you really want to do good things, if you just take a teaspoon, a teaspoon of sauerkraut every day is enough to repopulate your gut in certain families.
lactobacillus. And so eating those fermented foods, eating the kefir, eating the sauerkraut, eating pickles, how hard is it to eat a couple pickles?
Or vinegar, just vinegar in general.
Okay, that's a little harder for me.
Well, I mean, if you make your own salad dressing.
Yeah. And then fiber, 40 grams of fiber a day, which really isn't that hard. I actually should figure out how much fiber is in this. I bet you there's 10 or 15 grams of fiber
Well, getting back to
in
vinegar,
that.
if you want to kickstart your metabolism and detox every morning, it actually is pretty good. You use warm water, a tablespoon of organic vinegar with the mother, a teaspoon of lemon juice that you freshly squeeze, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a teaspoon to a tablespoon of organic honey, preferably grown where you live. And you stir that up in however much water you need. It's really good warmed, like a tea. And then your cinnamon will stir in better. And that actually detoxes, starts your metabolism, and lowers your blood pressure, helps you lose weight, and some other things.
Would you say there's like at least a third of a cup of oats in there?
Probably.
So that's a third of a cup of oats. Just the third of a cup of oats and the 2 dates that I ate out of here, that is 10 grams of fiber. That's not hard to get. So if you eat healthy and think about it, and that doesn't include the coconut, which is fiber. That doesn't include any of the nuts and seeds in here. It doesn't include the pumpkin seeds or any of that. I bet you that's 15 to 20 grams of fiber. And it's not hard. Throw that in on top of the smoothie that I drink every day or every couple of days, and you're looking at 50 grams of fiber. And it's super simple to do. Pickles are good. Make your own. You saw how easy that was. They're cheap too. How much is a jar of pickles?
Currently, it is, but in a few weeks, who knows how much little cucumbers are going to cost.
Still not. I mean, if you go buy
Well,
Bubby's
if we go
pickles,
buy Bubby's pickles, it's about $8.50 for a jar that size. Granted, they're sliced, so there's probably more pickles in there, but I don't know how much we paid for those little cucumbers. I think like $3 or $4. We probably got twice as much as we bought if we would have bought Bubby's.
because we
Probably
got
cost us about $4 or $5 because we had to buy the grape leaves. But those grape leaves,
we got 10 left.
yeah. But the pickling stuff.
The salt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2 tablespoons of sea salt will work. Doesn't it?
I think that has more than just salt in it. I think it has alum and things in it.
Huh.
Anyway.
Well, we went way over our 15-minute allotment that our marketing people tell us to keep. That's okay.
20 minutes is attention span. See you later.
Have a great night.